As a male of a certain age, I needed younger eyes to see the world. So I have a very clever female colleague, senior economist, who has decided that she'd be very happy to be my reverse mentor. So now I have the advantage of seeing through a 25-year-old female colleague's view of the world. And that's educating me to think about, how do we take these things and how do we take the good and spit out the bad? And how do we make sure that we introduce them at a pace and a rate that doesn't kill the business?
Hi, I'm Belden Menkus. Welcome to the Purposeful Strategist, the podcast that shifts the conversation about purpose and strategy from what organizations should do to what business leaders are doing and what they've learned along the way. My guest today is Douglas McCormick, Chief Executive Officer of Pegasus Group, one of the UK's leading independent multidisciplinary development consultancies with deep expertise across planning, design, environment, infrastructure, and heritage. Douglas brings a distinguished career of transformation and leadership. Previously at the helm of major consultancies such as Sweet Group plc, WYG plc, and the UK rail arm of Atkins, delivering growth, operational improvement, and commercial expansion. Since stepping into the CE role in 2024, Douglas has been driving Pegasus Group's next phase of growth and strategic ambition, building on a strong foundation to scale its services, enhance its industry influence, and harness innovation across the built environment. Douglas, welcome to the Purposeful Strategist.
Belden, thanks very much for having me.
Really great to have you here. So Pegasus Group has grown into one of the UK's leading development consultancies. Can you just give us a picture of what the firm looks like today, size, reach, kind of projects it's involved in?
Of course. So in addition to the things you mentioned, we do, transport infrastructure, economics, building surveying, and biodiverse net gain and strategic ecology. We're around 600 people today. We operate out of 15 offices across the UK. And this year we'll turn over somewhere in the region of £60 million. And our sweet spot is in all of that early consultancy work that clients come to us for. More than 70% of our business is repeat business. We do a huge amount in the residential sector and the energy sector, and we sprinkle things around some of the other sectors. And part of my growth strategy is looking at sector growth as well as delivering the services that we have. And we are very much a people business. We've got some offices and desks and computers and bits and bobs, but actually the heart of our business is very clever people who are subject matter experts in their own right, and people by people, and our people are exceptional. So I've been in role as chief exec for about 18 months, and it's been a real pleasure working with this team who have been so absolutely up for driving change and growth and moving the business into a place where for the future it's sustainable. Pegasus remains as a brand in the marketplace that continues to service clients beyond the working lifespan of any individual in the business, which I think is a really great ambition. I mean, we're quite boutique and niche. So, at 600 people, one of the strategic goals I set was to get to 1,000 people. And one of the inherent fears is always, as you grow and change a business, that you lose your culture. Our people are generally known by name and they're valued for who they are and what they bring. And none of them particularly want to become a very small cog in a great complex organization. And so I see us remaining as niche and boutique with that real personal family feeling, which sometimes sounds quite cheesy, but actually the appreciation of the value of the individuals who work for you and all they bring is absolutely latent in the business. Predating me, I think since the word go, that's been kind of in their DNA.
For 600 people, it seems you have a staggeringly wide array of fairly niche areas to be expert in. Is juggling all that difficult, or is it, no, it's all pretty natural? Or is it, no, we've really got like world experts in lots and lots and lots of these individual areas?
It's a bit of both. If we're going to draw an organizational diagram, it would consist of concentric circles that overlap, and there are sweet spots where they intersect. So the environmental team will use the biodiverse net gain team or the strategic ecology team. Planning will use heritage if we're looking at historic buildings or archaeology or stuff like that. But within each of those lines, there are subject matter experts. And in many of those lines, they're world-class people. So it is a bit of both. The organization began its life as a planning consultancy and then added environment and then added design and architecture. And all we're doing is kind of taking that inheritance and saying, okay, what are the adjacencies that sit comfortably alongside? So they're still in the kind of world that we're in, but they add value in their own right in the ability to offer a wide range of services to clients. So should they wish to employ us for half a dozen things, they can do so that they don't need to be managing 6 consultants, so they can manage 1 consultant. And in terms of organizing that, there's a senior leadership team which has a head of area of expertise for each of the service lines, and they run the P&L nationally for that. And we run them as a team so that they collaborate, and we incentivize them nationally and together to make sure that as far as possible, we're all working on the same thing, going in the same direction.
I think Pegasus has sort of described itself as shaping better places.
Yeah.
What does that phrase mean to you personally, and what does it mean for the firm?
So I like our purpose statement, which predates me. And the full purpose statement that we share is we bring innovative thinking to create beautiful places, enhancing the built and natural environment in a way that positively affects people's lives. And I like that because Simon Sinek, as you know, his books start with why. And if you don't know why, if you haven't got your purpose sorted out, then actually the motivation and the direction and the boundaries by which you encompass your business are less clear. We are not in business to make money. Making money is a byproduct of doing the right thing in the excellence of what you provide to your clients. We are enhancing the built and natural environment, and we're affecting people's lives. So the places people live, the places they go to work, or educational places, all sorts of places. That is a positive experience because of the quality of our contribution to the process. And ours is just a contribution to the process. But I think that's really important. And it becomes easy to align everybody if they all understand what the purpose is. So once a month, we gather all our new recruits together for a day, and I take the first half hour and we talk about what our purpose is, how we do that, and what do we do, so that people joining us understand the alignment of that. And then we live that. And do we do that perfectly? No, we're human. Do we do it pretty well? Yeah, we do it pretty well.
And how does that show up? How does that purpose influence the strategic choices you're making? It sounds like you're pursuing a strategy of kind of service adjacency, which to me makes a lot of sense. But it seems like there's an awful lot of services. How does that purpose play into which adjacencies you go after next?
So building surveying and the strategic ecology and biodiverse net gain overlap. So we're back to my concentric circles. They offer value in their own right. And as a standalone expertise, they bring something new. But they interact already with what we do. And one of the early ways of starting to look at transformation and growth was to look at who are all our sub-consultants? Who do we divest part of our revenue to others to be able to provide the service? And that was an obvious place to start to say, well, actually, there's some things here we could do ourselves and retain the revenue, but also have the enhanced service so that we're not saying to a client, we can do this bit here, but actually for that bit over there, we need to add these people. That has been part of the guiding principle, and it has to live with the purpose. So actually, whether you're employing people or whether you're working for clients or whether you're delivering projects, the values and behaviors that come in the arena you're in are absolutely critical. So as well as that expertise, there's what are the values and behaviors? And if you're not interested in creating beautiful places that enhance the built and natural environment, and you're not really bothered whether you affect people's lives positively, we probably don't want you in our company, and we probably don't want to work for you.
But talking about beautiful places, it does seem to me that sometimes there's and I'm not saying Pegasus Group ever goes down this road, but a sort of I want to make this beautiful. I, the designer, the planner, whatever, I'm going to stamp my personality on it. And everybody who comes is going to be awed by how amazing it is. And, the life may be better because of that, but it's sort of more about me than about them. Does that show up at all as a tension, and how do you deal with it?
I'm smiling professionally. I'm a chartered quantity surveyor. As a QS looking to create value in whatever projects I was involved in, part of it was the destruction of monuments to the designer. Without stifling or destroying the creative ability to produce beautiful places, because that's what you want. But I think there's a line, if somebody crosses the line where it moves from being that aesthetic desire to produce the right product to a monument to oneself, then I think that needs some trimming of the sails and just saying, perhaps that's just going a little too far. Having said that, equally too, you and I are both aware of iconic buildings around the world. You'll say that's a Rogers building, or it's a Foster's building, or it's a Lorenzo Piano building, And so finding the balance between not having a kind of egotistical trip in design versus making sure that the absolute maximum creative opportunity is there. That's challenging. And it comes down to relationship. It comes down to the ability to have assertive conversations, never aggressive conversations, to have clear conversations with people. And if you've drawn the boundary lines and scoped the work properly, then they should be able to live within that. And balancing that, there's always a business case, there's always a commercial aspect to make sure that in the development, it gives the return on investment that the developer or the investor is making for that. So is that challenging? Yeah. That managing people thing is always a challenge.
If you'll indulge me for a second, to what extent can the work that Pegasus Group does create the conditions for stronger, better, healthier communities? To what extent can our buildings really shape the communities we live in?
I think hugely, Belden. And I think one of the reasons clients employ us is because, yes, there's a space, there's a plot of land, there's a location. The expertise is how do you take that to its optimum expression in design, in landscape, in the features and the facilities that are provided. I think it's really important. So one of the things we've been doing, when I turned up at Pegasus 18 months ago, we were into just all of our leases across the country beginning to come up. And we've moved half a dozen of our offices in the last 18 months into new spaces with a better quality of space than perhaps was previously there in some instances. But what we've done is we've created spaces that our colleagues and our clients love to come to. And it creates a behavioral pattern. And I think what we've done in our offices is a microcosm of what we do for clients in the developments that they bring to us. So I absolutely think one of our USPs is the ability to produce fabulous spaces that people do feel proud to live in. And balancing all the commercial factors, our USP is that we still produce magic places.
I love that word, magic. If you can, is there an example you might give of a magic place that might even have been done before you got there, because I assume these things take a while, but one that Pegasus was involved in and you're aware of and particularly proud of?
Yes, there's a very lovely set of service stations. So when you think of a motorway service station, magic and lovely are not words that generally come to your mind.
Not every time.
No. But there's a very lovely place at T-Bay on the road north. And the T-Bay service stations is a Pegasus project. And with our client, who we've done one or two of these with, we have produced a magic space. So when you get to T-Bay services, your shoulders go down and it's beautiful. It's got lovely design. It provides a whole lot of facilities and it feels warm and inviting. It doesn't feel like this is a functional space that I've stopped at because I need something to eat and I want a refresh break. So picking a motorway service station, I think, is probably one of my odder examples of a magic space. And if you have the joy of doing that either on the M5 as you go south or as you go up to T-Bay, there are some very lovely examples of a space that you wouldn't exactly expect to come anywhere close to that, but really does.
No, I love that idea that sort of you can create the special, the magic in sort of almost the most mundane background environment situation. You operate very much, seems to me, at the intersection of both public and private interests. How do you ensure that the commercial strategy, the way you make money, really aligns with broader societal environmental goals? That's got to be part of what you're trying to do, but how do you do it?
Well, I can answer in two ways. The organization ourselves. So we're just about to publish our 2025 update on our ESG strategy. And so our environmental commitment is to be net zero by 2026. And we'll need to do some offsetting around to get to that because we still need to travel. We put heat and light in our offices and things like that. But part of it for me is around how you create social value. And that's whether it's social value in terms of the development that we're doing or what social value do we generate as a business. One of the things our economics team specialize in is the calculation of social value as part of the developmental equation. For me, it's also around what do we do around social mobility and diversity, equality and inclusion. DEI in some parts of the world is no longer as popular as it was, but frankly, I think in a human response to business, DEI is important. So one or two of the things we've been doing, introducing school leaver apprenticeships, degree apprenticeships, where you don't need to go to university, come to us and study part-time. What that does is it allows people who either don't want to or could never afford to go to university to develop a career. Given I started my working life as an apprentice, I'm quite biased about this, but the ability to learn and grow and actually to learn all the social skills and the interaction with people and how people work and the politics of offices and all of that, that's very good. My other thing is that I absolutely believe that any organization should reflect the society of which it's a part. So that the diversity, equality, and inclusion thing means we say openly, you are welcome to come as you are. I can't help being a grey-haired male of a certain age, but I want to make sure my business doesn't all look like me, because variety is the spice of the life, and the richness that you get with the variety of people who bring different perspectives and different understanding, cultural backgrounds that are different. The whole range of that for me is just an enormous thing. And if you have that in your DNA and in your business, then you're going to transmit that in the work that your hands do for the clients that you serve. And that's really important. One of my favorite Richard Branson quotes is, Richard Branson says, if you look after your people, they look after your customers and the money looks after itself.
One of the things I'm getting from this conversation is that you have a very good, astute, kind of commercial and strategic brain, but that actually what's driving you, kind of your secret sauce, is a really big heart.
Yeah, I've never been described as soft and cuddly. And I definitely have a killer instinct in me, because you can't be a chief exec if you lack the 2% killer instinct. But I learned a whole lot about how life really works. I worked for a homeless charity for 5 years as the trust administrator. So I ran the business side of the charity. But I got to understand that homelessness is not about not having a home. It's about a whole lot of other very sad circumstances that affect more people than it should in our world. But I learned a huge amount about human nature. And my observation, having worked there in those circumstances and having worked all over the world, is that under the skin, we're all the same. We're people, and people make the world go round. That carrots always work better than sticks. And if you love and care for your people, and I use the words carefully, I mean that, then way beyond pay and rations and terms and conditions, they will produce their best for you. Because one of the most devastating things that one of my bosses only had to say to me once is, he said, Douglas, I'm disappointed. And I have never wanted to be in that place again. When you manage well, the very idea somebody might say to you, I'm disappointed, would be something you would go a very long way to avoid. So I have a big heart, but I'm not a softie, and I'm very capable of doing the difficult things. But they should be the exception, not the rule. If everything's a difficult thing, then you're doing something wrong.
In your career, you've led several consultancies through a transformation. From that, what have you learned about leading through change, and what are the common pitfalls that leaders often fall into?
I think the first rule is that the people that got you into the mess are never going to get you out the mess, assuming that it's a mess we're trying to sort out. So that might be your first difficult thing to do. You might need to sort out your team. Now, it might not be all of them. It seldom is all of them. And then you need to look at how are they organized. Commonly, I find businesses that are organized in little boxes called offices. So if you run your P&L through your office and you've got 10 offices, your level of internecine warfare in a restricted geography is going to be high. So you need to think about, how does the accounting drive the behavior? So, for example, if you're one P&L and I'm another P&L and I get a job in your back garden, I am going to drive over you to do that job because it goes through my revenue stream, not yours. Whereas if we're all aligned, I can phone you and say, Belden, I've got a job in your back garden. Could you have some of your folks have a look at it for us? And obviously the advantage and the efficiency and all the rest of it around that. I think the other thing that I quite commonly find is that the finance tail and the people department tail wag the dog. So corporate functions are support functions, and the clue is in the name. They are support functions. Decisions are made by boards and directors and operational people, albeit with the safety and the governance that comes around an organization. But if you've got a place where your people team are saying, no, you can't do that. No, you can't hire that person. No, you can't do this. Or your finance people are saying, you can't have that because that just restricts the ability to transform and change the business. And that just takes some conversations to adjust that. And then you need to look at what you're doing. So a lot of organizations where they get into trouble is because they started doing, let's say, planning. And then we decided we'd drive school buses or we would do meals. And they add things that is a scattergun of stuff. And undoubtedly, one of the reasons they're in a mess is because of that. Because how do you control that? How do you manage that? And actually, you're pulled in several different ways. And you may well have a place where the business models have to be different for different things. So you've got a confusion of business models. There's a need to go back and look very carefully at what were you really good at? How do you get back to where you started? And then start to look at what actually delivers value and makes profit for your investors. What is delivering what your purpose is? And what things have just become slightly odd additions. And you probably then need to get rid of those. And you can sell them or you can close them. There are a range of options. You can look at what you do with that. And what you're beginning to do is, like a yacht, if all your sails are flapping about, you're not going anywhere. As you begin to tighten up these things, what you're doing is you're trimming your sails and suddenly you can catch the wind in the marketplace and the sectors that you're in with the clients that you serve. And always remembering it's about people. So the new chief exec comes in, the staff all know it's a mess. The staff could have told you all about that. In fact, one of the first things I normally do is visit every place in the company and talk to every member of staff, because that'll tell me more than any board report will tell me. And the need for calm leadership with some authority, and by authority, I don't mean I am the boss, you will do what I say. I mean just that conveyance of confidence that you know what you're doing and it will be fine. But if you've lost your purpose and it's all over the place, if you haven't sorted out that support functions support and operational functions deliver, if you've got toxic people, it just takes one toxic person in a team or an organization to ruin it. And you need to deal with those. And the only way you deal with those is to remove them. And sometimes doing the hard things are the things where leaders fall down because they don't like that assertive conversation, or they don't like the fact that you need to remove somebody from your organization for the good of the organization. If I have gangrene traveling up my leg, they're going to chop it off, because if they don't, I'm going to die. If you have things in your organization that shouldn't be there and you don't deal with them, then you're going to die. As the chief executive, it sits with you. You are it. And if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. So you need to be brave and courageous and get out there and get on with it.
Really important message. Changing the direction a little bit, just wanted to see if we could explore kind of, I'll say AI, but more broadly, general, new digital tools for planning, design, environmental assessment. I'm sure we could add a long list of things. If you look at the business, in the field you're in, where do you see the real important opportunities for innovation? Is it AI? Is it something else? Is that even a useful distinction?
I think AI is world changing, that's for sure. I don't think it's ever going to replace human beings. I do think there's a real social implication of less highly educated roles no longer being required. So routine administrative type roles, I do think the automation that's now possible has an implication for unskilled work in a way that has always been a threat. But the speed of this is quite astonishing. The transformational change. I have never in all my career said to a client, oh, by the way, you need to know I've used Excel for this. Or actually, I use Word, did a bit of PowerPoint over there. AI is a tool which, used well, can accelerate and augment what you're able to do, but it never takes away the professional need to have a look at it. It's a tool in good hands that adds value. It is unlikely ever to be an answer in itself. But the rate at which you adopt that, of course, is a question too. Now, a lot of businesses are run by people that look like me. And if we really want something done, we're probably going to ask your 11-year-old son or your daughter, can you sort out my iPhone for me? That generational thing is really quite important. So one of the things I've done just very recently is I decided that as a male of a certain age, I needed younger eyes to see the world. So I have a very clever female colleague, senior economist, who has decided that she'd be very happy to be my reverse mentor. So now I have the advantage of seeing through a 25-year-old female colleague's view of the world. And that's educating me to think about, how do we take these things and how do we take the good and spit out the bad? And how do we make sure that we introduce them at a pace and a rate that doesn't kill the business? So we now employ more data analysts than we used to employ, because data is everything. Data analytics is one of the things that I've introduced so that people can go and find themselves an introductory course, or we're creating an introductory course. I quite often run pilots. So if you've got something, why don't you run it in a box over there and get to a place where you've debugged as much of it as you can and you're clear that it adds value and it's not just it was a nice idea, but let's not do anything more with it. It's okay to fail. Much rather it failed in a corner over there in a pilot than we'd rolled it out across the whole business and suddenly we're in crisis because it cost a fortune and it doesn't work. So that ability to do stuff is quite incredible, really. But we're still going to need clever human brains to look at it and go, yeah, not quite right.
So you've got potential pilots, you've got lots of smart people who I'm sure a fair number of them are fairly entrepreneurial anyway. There's often sort of people wanting to do things, and you talked about the risk of you get involved in lots of different things that somebody thought was a good idea, and you could maybe even make a little bit of money at, but now it sort of seems like it's a distraction. As an organization, how do you go through coming up with a strategy, renewing it, whatever, and if you do it, any sort of annual planning, budgeting? If you can, walk me through who gets involved and what the meetings are and what does it look like?
So each service line has a head of the area of expertise. The first outing is, where do they want to go and what do they want to do? And how many people do you need to do that? And what's the cost associated with that? And if I send you our P&L account, the top figure you would see would be the profit. A lot of people put profit at the bottom, so you have to read all the way to the bottom. See, I like to see profit at the top. The commitment from each area of the business is to deliver the profit that we've agreed. And we've agreed a profit. So we do it from the bottom up with the area of expertise coming forward with a plan. If they've got additions or they've got new services or they've got things they want to add, then we look at that quite closely to make sure that it's not mad. It seldom is, and then we pull the whole thing together and we look at it and think, is that what we really want to put to the board? Are you confident you're going to deliver that? We go through 2 or 3 iterations of that. So it's a very consultative process.
A question for you before we go. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners? Anything we haven't touched on that you think would be important to cover?
I think the greatest challenge for leaders in business is to talk to your people. I don't have an office deliberately because I see no point in taking up square footage when I'm seldom in it because I wander around all of our business. The key thing to success in transforming a business is go and talk to your people. They'll know more than some of the folk that sit around your top table. You'll learn from your people who are delivering at the coalface what your business is really like. And with that personal knowledge of your people and of what's going on, then you are able to take the right decisions and move the business at a very rapid pace. So my advice is always live generously, be kind, talk to your people, be brave and get on with it.
Well, that last one, I think, is in some ways the master key for getting on with it, because you can spend a lot of time intending to do all those things.
Yeah.
Well, Douglas, thank you again for joining us. It's been, for me, really inspiring. So I appreciate you coming and sharing your experiences.
Belden, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Purposeful Strategist. In addition to being available on our website, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, please do follow us and leave us a 5-star review. It helps others find the podcast. Thanks again, and join us soon for the next episode of The Purposeful Strategist.